Happy New Year, everyone, and welcome back to the Gas for our first show of 2026. I'm Gary Gastelou. This is the Gary and Alex Show, and with me, fortunately not still wearing his disheveled tuxedo from New
Oh yeah.
Year's Eve, Alex Nunez. How you doing? Have you slept it off? You feeling good? You ready to
Oh,
go for
I
the
feel
show?
great. I know our guest personally, so I wanted to be sure I was like super on, super on for today's show. So here we are. This is me super on.
We will be joined by a very exciting guest a little bit later on. But right now, I want to talk about the big kickoff to 2026. Not often you see the first day of the year, also a new model released the first day of the year. But that's what Ram did with the return of the Ram 1500 TRX, now with 777 horsepower. We knew this truck was coming, Alex, but 777, that's pretty darn cool.
It's pretty good, and I have a feeling it's going to do just fine in the marketplace. Alongside everything else in that price strata. I think people have been waiting for this to come back. You'll be happy it came back, and some fun little new details on it, as well, to, also separate it from the previous iteration that, had its brief hiatus.
The nickname always has been the T-Rex, as in the dinosaur, and they've actually updated the logo now. So there is a T-Rex head on it. $102,000. Ford F-150 Raptor R, of course, is its top competitor. That's about $114,000, if you could believe that, with 720 horsepower. I was checking the internet listings the other day. I can only find seven Raptor R's on lots at dealers right now, and they were all marked up to like 130, $140,000. It's pretty wild how strong this market is for these big monster
Yeah,
trucks.
no, I mean it's there. These are the everyday supercars, for lack of a better, term. Listen, we know that the market for high value trucks is there. I mean, you could spend more than that easily on a loaded up HD anything. So, get your hot rod TRX, Ram 1500 bazillion horsepower thing. Maybe you'll start a new arms race with Ford, who's gonna, who should maybe react and, could we see more power coming? Who knows? But this is the fun stuff, and it's fun that it happened, first day of the year.
Ford actually unveiled a 900 horsepower version of the Raptor R at SEMA last year. They're thinking about doing one of those Ford Racing Parts kits for it, but that doesn't count in the battle. They're going to need to up it at the factory. And honestly, the way things have been going with the Mustang lately, I wouldn't be surprised to see a 2027 Raptor R that's got more than 720 horsepower.
Let the slugfest begin. We know how much power that the engines that these trucks run are actually capable of making, and it's far greater than what they're showing right now.
Still baffles me that General Motors is not in this game. It's got the ZR2, the Silverado ZR2 lineup, but that's got the 420 horsepower V8. They've done nothing with these superpower engines. I'm guessing that's because they got caught up in the electrification thing, but now that they have a new generation of V8s coming out next year, you think they're finally going to get in to the super truck segment?
Listen, they have the parts bin. They could do it so easily. All the pieces are there. You see it partially. You see kind of what can happen. Escalade V shows, I mean, it's really just like putting together a set of Legos. Put the blown V8 in, in the truck chassis, and do your thing, and you can go play with these guys. You could do an off-road, God, or you could do a street truck thing and go the totally opposite direction. I would love to see GM do it. Let's see what happens.
Of course, the TRX is a big part of Ram's V8 engine truck resurgence. An exciting part of that coming up is its return to NASCAR in February in the NASCAR Truck Series with Colleague Racing. That's one of the most exciting things happening this year in the world of motorsports, but there's plenty more coming in the US and around the world. And joining us now to help discuss that and also talk about his exciting new project is motorsports photographer Jamey Price. He's got a new book out called Racing Unfiltered, A Year in Motorsports, captured on film. You probably know Jamey from seeing his name down there under the photo in one of your favorite automotive publications. Jamey, thanks for joining us on the show.
Thanks for having me. It's an honor.
So you shoot all over the world, all the time, all these racing series, but you had this idea that instead of shooting with a digital camera, you were going to get some vintage cameras and bring them along and take shots at some of these races. What did inspire you to do that? I'm sure your career's been in the digital age, I would imagine. Did you ever even work in film, or is this something
No,
entirely new
Yeah,
for you,
I never
basically.
shot film. I kind of started my first race that I covered was a NASCAR truck race. Actually, it was Kimi Räikkönen's debut in the NASCAR Truck Series at Charlotte Motor Speedway in 2011. That was one of the first events that I ever shot with credentials. I also covered an American Le Mans Series race at Mid-Ohio kind of around the same time in May of 2011. So it all kind of happened at the same time for me, but it was very deep into the digital age where I never shot film. It just wasn't, it still doesn't really have a place in modern sports photography where our clients need pictures like rapidly within minutes or, at the most an hour after a session is, a race is done. Film just doesn't really work very well for that. So film just was never something that I dabbled in, but I found this photographer that was I guess he put up a reel or something on Instagram with these little dinky NASCAR, like they look like NASCAR stock cars, but it's a film camera and you reload 35 millimeter film into it. And this photographer does not shoot any kind of motorsport or racing stuff. And I was like, I have to have this. I have to have this camera. It looks so cool and so much fun. And the pictures that he shot weren't awful. So like I knew it had enough quality, it just had enough of the components to be kind of interesting. And so I brought one to a test session actually at Circuit of the Americas with Lamborghini when we were testing the SC63 hypercar that they had produced. And I brought two or three rolls of film with me and it didn't work. Basically, like the camera I brought had broken before I even loaded film into it. So it was kind of a really discouraging start. So I was like, all right, I'm going to give it one more shot. And I bought another camera that I found on eBay and I brought it to the Rolex 24 in 2024. And I shot five or six rolls of film on it. And when they came back, I was like, okay, this is kind of cool, actually. And so I just kept it going for the entire year of 2024. It was really fun.
When you're shooting regular on digital cameras, how many pictures do you take at a typical race? Let's say a Formula One race, such a shorter race.
F1 is honestly like not super labor intensive physically or photography wise. Like we're maybe doing I don't know, like Monaco is kind of one of the races where you shoot probably the most because you can get to so much of the track so easily. Somewhere like Circuit of the Americas or Miami, for example, or Vegas, like you might do maybe 4 or 5 thousand pictures from the entire day, like drivers walking in and press conferences, the race, the grid, all that stuff. It's actually not that much for Formula One just because the race is short and it's harder to get around corner to corner. But Monaco, you're probably doing 8 to 10,000 pictures from one race day, and that doesn't include like practice or qualifying or anything. And then a 24-hour race like Rolex 24, you can almost triple that number. It's closer to 30,000 because of the length of the race, but because also like it's a great track and the racing action is great. But yeah, you're talking like tens of thousands of pictures.
And how many of those actually get used, or do you think are good enough to be used?
I'll probably deliver a couple hundred per client at the end of a race weekend. So they'll probably get like between 150 to 200. So it's not a small number of pictures that we're still delivering, but it's not, you're probably averaging like it's like 1% of what you shoot as actually gonna like end up anywhere. And then what they use is ultimately up to them, not me. So
So, what is it like to shoot just a couple of dozen pictures and have no idea what they look like until you get them developed a couple of
it's
days
really
later for
challenging.
you?
It's a weird thing for me because I have so much respect for what my predecessors in photography and motorsport photography were doing in the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, the early 2000s before digital became something that was a reliable tool to use in a work environment because there were a lot of holdouts for like the film to digital switch. They were like, I don't know if this is gonna work. Like you've seen those funny headlines in newspapers where it's like passing fad, something called the internet may or may not stick around. It's kind of like that, where they were like, digital's okay, but it's not as good quality as the film is. And so there was a lot of holdouts to digital, but the work that they were producing, in Formula One and sports car racing and NASCAR, World Rally Championship, like Le Mans, you name it. Some of the photographers, I still think that their pictures are better than what we're producing today on digital. I think it ultimately just comes down to the photographer understanding the sport, which is still something that's important to understand. You can't just go out there like wildly swinging and hopefully you're going to get a nice picture. You do actually have to think about your composition, think about your lenses, think about your settings, all this stuff that we're having to just kind of process on a minute by minute basis. They were doing with film without being able to see it. So when I have these dinky little cameras, I don't have any ability to change settings. I don't have any ability to change lenses. The only thing I can change in these cameras is what film stock I put in it and where I stand and point these cameras. So it was kind of like a almost back to basics type of photography for me. The fun part about these cameras is that even though I can't change the settings, they just natively, like for however the shutter inside of it is built, it has a slow shutter speed, meaning, when you're taking a picture, if you're not panning with your subject or your subject isn't standing perfectly still, you can get movement in the camera and in the picture, which is a good and bad thing. So if your subject is moving, it's great. But if your subject is moving and you're not wanting it to be moving, it's really challenging. So, I can take these cameras out trackside and I can do, basic level of panning with the cars as they go by. But you don't know if you got it. Like I've gotten some really cool pictures where I didn't intend for it to be as much movement as there is in it, and it worked out. Like there's a shot in the book where Fred Vasseur, the team principal of Scuderia Ferrari, was walking down pit lane and he walked in front of the Alpine. They had set up a big Alpine team photo. They were doing it actually for the F1 movie. So all of the cars, they lined them up on pit lane and they had each car crew standing behind the cars, and Brad Pitt and some of the other actors went down the pit lane taking pictures with each crew as like a thank you for letting us ruin your lives for 3 years or whatever it was, 2.5 years. And Fred's walking down pit lane after the Ferrari guys had done their photo, and he just walked in front of the Alpine team picture, and I happened to I happened to take my little film camera and take a picture of him walking past the Alpine car, and he's kind of like doing like a funny hand motion, like just kind of like trying to block the photographer. And it's actually kind of a cool photo where you can see movement. He's clearly walking. The background is not super sharp, but he's sharp because I'm panning him. Um, it's stuff like that where it happened to work out, but there's plenty of other times where a driver's been standing there. I thought I got a shot where it's nice and sharp, and then I get the film rolls back and it's like a muddy mess of blur, and I'm like, well, oh well.
Going to be honest, I was a little worried about doing an audio podcast about photography, but you're drawing word pictures that are probably better than the real
Probably, yes.
thing. Pretty impressive to hear you describe the process and what these photos look like. Let me ask you, do you have a particular favorite composition you like to get at every race? Cars coming through a curve, cars up on the banking. Like, is there one you always are looking for when you go to the
Yeah, it
track?
really depends on the track that we're going to. I mean, some places like Monaco, again, for example, is a really cool racetrack. Like, no, it doesn't produce great racing on TV, but when you're standing there in person, it's incredible. So you're trying to capture what the track is like to see in person. Like I always kind of tell people that if you boil my job down to the most basic element of what it is to be a photographer, is that it's my job to go and experience an event and document it through photography for the people that weren't there or don't understand it or don't have any, understanding of what it's like to be at Le Mans or what it's like to be at the Daytona 500 or Indy 500 or, pick your race, and what it's like for someone to be there and experience that event, the racetrack, the cars, how they attack the curbs. So places like Daytona, you kind of have to do all of it, where they're up on the banking at sunrise in the middle of the night. You go up to the grandstands, and then you go to places like Monaco where you want to show the cars right up against the Armco barriers. Le Mans, you have big trees, like big, beautiful pine forests in the background, and the Dunlop curve, which I guess is now the
Goodyear
Goodyear
curve, yeah.
Bridge and Goodyear Bridge, which is just I will die on the hill that it'll always be the Dunlop Bridge and Dunlop Curve. Sorry, Goodyear. But you have to like show all that stuff, and you have to go to as many places as you can. And it always kind of makes me laugh when I see in my social media comments where people are like, what an easy job to just stand there at one curb, like, or one corner all day. Like, what a joke of a job this is. It's like, dude, I've walked like 30 miles like in the last 15 hours with camera gear.
And fighting the other guys for that hole in the
Exactly.
fence,
So
right?
yeah, like you kind of want to show all of it and come away with what it's like to experience that event and that particular race. Not every event is a great event, but some of them are pretty cool. So you want to kind of show that as much as possible.
Given that everybody in the world has a camera now, it's pretty impressive that some publications are still out there hiring people like you to get the good stuff. Do you think there's still a future? You're going to be doing this 20 years from now, or at some point, do they just give up and start throwing the junk on their
There's
publications?
probably going to be a tipping point, but I don't know. Like, I'm hoping that AI is a tool. Like, it's a tool that we all can use in various different ways. Some ways are more, they're going to hurt more jobs than others. My hope is that, a job like mine, or wedding photographers, you can't recreate a moment. You can't recreate like something that happened in real life, and those teams want that right then and there. Like, could they go on ChatGPT and say, make the AO Rexy car be running on the banking at Daytona in the middle of the night? Like, yes, they could. But whether or not they choose to do that and choose to like fire their photographers, or I really don't know. But my hope is that I'll be around for long enough to not have to worry about that. But we'll see. Like, it's all happened really fast. And to be honest with you, the editorial side where magazines are hiring photographers, that probably stopped being a pretty lucrative position probably 10 years ago, maybe a little bit more than that, when print magazines kind of died a little bit, or they've just shifted their editorial coverage. Like, it's just hard. I personally don't go to Barnes and Noble anymore. Like, I don't go to the bookstore anymore. And unless I'm going through an airport, it's rare that I'm picking up a magazine. I'm a good example of a millennial Gen Z, like type of person where I'm ingesting my news from the internet and I'm not holding print publications as much. But the good news is that when editorial and newspapers and magazines kind of stopped hiring photographers, or stopped being, it's not even that they stopped hiring, they stopped being willing to pay for photography. The teams and the manufacturers have not, and that has stayed pretty consistent. So, even if the editorial side is dead, you'll get some bronze driver that's running in a Corvette or a Ferrari. They just want really cool pictures for their Instagram of them driving in the Rolex 24 or Le Mans, and they're willing to pay for it, like far better than the magazines ever were, which is great. I'll take that all day.
You got your season slated already? What's your first race for
Yeah, more or
2026?
less, I mean, it's kind of the good part and bad part of a job like mine, where you don't there's not a ton of stability, but I do know more or less where I am a year in advance. So we can kind of plan some family vacations, because I have two kids and a wife and a dog. So I have an actual life outside of the racetrack. But my year usually starts with the Rolex 24 IMSA WeatherTech race. So I'll be down in Daytona for almost 2 weeks covering the test session. We have a whole media day where we do staged studio, like, on a white backdrop, photos with the drivers or just teams together, that kind of stuff. And then we go into actual race week, which is a whole nother animal into itself, which is just, long days, long hours, and then you have a 24-hour race at the back of all of those long days and long hours. And then I go straight to Canada for a winter ice driving event with Lamborghini, which is always a really cool highlight of my year. I mean, it's a cold highlight, but last year we had multiple days below zero, and you're thrashing, a Lamborghini Revuelto and the Urus SE and some of the other products that Lamborghini has, and they have studded tires, and we're just throwing them around an ice track in Canada. It's pretty awesome, and they let me drive it occasionally too. So it's not a bad one. And then I pretty much have a little bit of time off before I go to Bahrain for the first, but it's not the actual first Formula One test of 2026. So it kind of just, once it starts in January, it doesn't really stop again until December.
Formula One, of course, the series with the most changes coming next year. All new cars, all new power units. Cadillac joining the series. Ford back in the series with Red Bull powertrains. And at least here in the US, the broadcast is going to be moving to Apple TV. So that could have a big effect for the fans. Alex, what do you think about the upcoming Formula One season?
I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to watching what comes out of Jamie's camera because again, like new year, new cars, new everything. It's exciting for everybody. I mean, Jamie is so close to Formula One. I think people forget, the photographers that travel to the different series and follow specific series, like especially like Jamie does with Formula One, amongst his litany of other clients. You sort of forget that the photographers are really tuned into what's going on the ground, and it's not because they're sitting in like every single like meeting and everything like that. It's just because you're so embedded. Jamie, can you talk for a second about how you view the narratives that happen in media and social, which I know you see? It must be really interesting from your perspective as somebody who actually sees what's going on the ground, sees some of the interplay between the teams and people, and has an understanding of how different the reality is versus maybe what's presented.
I mean, the analogy I always use is like, once you see how the hot dog is made, like you never really look at hot dogs the same way again. It's very much the same way with Formula One. And I think, I won't say which publication or which journalist it is, but there's a publication, a big one in Formula One that pays an agency of photographers to scoop them information occasionally. Like, because you're right, we do hear things before almost everybody else sees it or does it. Like I've known about some of the projects that have been coming down the pipe in sports car racing long before they were announced, before they were shown to the world, because you start connecting dots. It's like, why do I see this driver walking into this hauler? Or why is this person in this garage? Why is this person sitting in this hospitality? Or you're asked to even do like a photo shoot of said person in somebody else's team gear before they've been announced, and you have a non-disclosure agreement, but we're not deaf. Like we're standing there with a camera within generally like you can hear people talking. Like it's not that I can lip read, but like a little bit you can kind of tell what people are saying just by listening to what they're saying, but also seeing what their mouth is doing, what their actions are, and how there's just a whole side of it that we are really, really entrenched in the the side of the sport that the fans don't, they have no idea. They have no idea how these teams utilize photographers to on the technical side, on the tire management side. That's just in Formula One. Like I've done tech and spy photography and IMSA WeatherTech World Endurance Championship, Super Trofeo, which is a one make series. Like it's at every level, and it's not just Formula One. And that's not even talking about like kind of what you're talking about, where it's, the inter-team politics of who's going where, who's doing what, or who's bringing in, or, sponsorship type agreements, things like that, that for whatever reason, we're almost usually the first people to hear about it just because we're around all the time and we're just listening and talking to other people. And we're not dumb. We're journalists essentially, just with a camera. There is a handful of fans out there that just think that photographers are just we just stand there and push buttons. It's like if you want to think that, feel free, but it's not the actual case.
What was the vibe at the end of the season last year at F1? Are they excited about this year, trepidatious, optimistic? What's the thought about how 2026 is going to go?
I think the cars are going to be completely different to drive. I mean, I have colleagues, again, photographers that we are close with the drivers and you talk to them and you kind of just chat as people, but also people that are deeply passionate and interested in motorsport and racing. And, like one of the drivers has said to a friend of mine that the cars are going to be completely different, that there's going to be a lot of lift and coast down the straightaways to recharge the batteries. Then you go into a corner that it's going to be like corners are going to be taken completely differently than they have been in the past. So I think there's just a ton of question marks as to how this is actually going to go. Big regulation change always has like a big discrepancy between the top teams and the bottom teams. I mean, it happens with every regulation change in Formula One or any type of racing where you have a big change to the aerodynamics and the engines. The last one, Mercedes dominated at the end of a Red Bull era previously. So Mercedes then went on to win how many seasons consecutively? It may be the same where you have a lot of these teams that just didn't go down the right path, or their engine is underpowered or underperforming. They've made a design chain or just a design choice with the aerodynamics that you can't easily unchange. I think the teams are very cautious about where this is going to go. I'm curious just because yes, they've made the cars smaller, but they're not that much smaller and they're not that much lighter. It's only like 50 kilograms or something lighter, which is, it's not that much at the end of the day. And when you actually physically compare one of the cars from, the late 90s or early 2000s to what we have to like, at the end of 2025, the 2025 cars are massive. They are absolutely massive when you stand next to one and then you compare it to you're standing next to a car from 1998 or 2005. They're so small and compared to what we have in the modern era. And I'm gonna hold my judgment until I see the cars, hear the cars, and see them performing and see the drivers having to manage the different aerodynamic modes that they're gonna have. I think it's getting way too complicated, but it was already too complicated, but it's getting even more complicated.
I've been watching some videos lately of people driving the old 1970s F1 cars, and when you see them standing next to them, I mean, they were like
Yeah,
Yeah.
go-karts, those
literally.
things. It's
Literally.
amazing that they were doing the speeds they were doing in them, no crash protection whatsoever up front where their feet were in front of the front axle. It really was just a whole different ballgame
Yeah,
back
I don't
then.
know that I want to go back to it, but at the same time, wish there was a happy medium between, the boats that they've had for the last couple of years and potentially what we'll have, for this new regulation change and the smaller cars, lighter cars, nimble cars, where you see them turning on a dime. Like these cars don't turn on a dime unless they're, really doing, 200 miles an hour through Maggots and Beckett's at Silverstone. I don't know. I really wish that Formula One would kind of go back to a simpler time a little bit.
Alex, one bummer with F1. The first three races, Australia, China, Japan, they're all on in the middle of the night for many Americans. So as far as that Cadillac kickoff, that's going to kind of stink. On the other side of that, though, we got the IndyCar season, which is all on Fox Network this year again, which is great. But not a lot of big changes to that series. We talked about Mick Schumacher joining a couple of weeks ago. They've got the new races at Arlington, Markham, Canada, a city which Americans never heard of before IndyCar decided to hold a race there. And the return to Phoenix, those are really the big things happening. But do you think IndyCar's 2026 season has potential to regain momentum for that
I think
series?
a lot of it depends on how Fox promotes, gets out there and drives awareness. I mean, I think the IndyCar series, I think, is full of great racing. It's, if you ask me, it's Alex Palou's series to lose once again until, unless and until someone shows up and demonstrates that on a consistent basis they could challenge, challenge you might see him, run away with it. But I think the move to Fox, this like second full year of it on, for lack of a better term, free TV helps a lot. I think we saw some decent growth in that series last year, and I love their season kickoff. I love that St. Pete race. It looks so good on TV, and it's always nice to see those cars in that warm sort of palm tree backdrop environment.
When are they supposed to be getting a new chassis for IndyCar?
My understanding is I think it's 2028, so it's like an eternity.
Yeah, they've bumped it to
That
2028. It was
that's the
supposed to be next
that's
year,
the
but they pushed
biggest
it off
thing
again.
for me about IndyCar is that like I've been shooting that chassis since 2012.
Yeah,
That same chassis, like, okay, yeah, they added the aeroscreen and they've changed the aerodynamics. Like there was the really heavy downforce versions of it, but it hasn't changed. Like I that's my biggest gripe with this with IndyCar is like I love IndyCar. It sounds good, the racing is good. The drivers at the like upper to elite level of IndyCar are great. Um, but it's just they need a new chassis like so badly, and I don't know why it's taken this long.
One piece of good news for you is that one of the reasons they delayed the new chassis is because the first prototype, nobody liked how it looked, and they wanted something that had a better style to it. So apparently they've worked on that and are hopefully going to have something that looks good
No.
in 2028.
I hope so. We'll see. I mean, I get to cover, a handful of IndyCar races, and it's always a blast. I've covered the Indy 500 before, and it's like nothing I've ever experienced. And it has its place in motorsport. Like, I wish that the toxic F1 fan community could like give it a chance and it's not a competitor to Formula One. It's just different. And I love the series. I think the drivers are some of the best in the world. I mean, I wish we could get like a proper taking Colton out of it. Like I wish we could get like an Alex Palou sitting in an actual F1 test where they're actually doing like times, not kind of like a rookie test where we've got Pato doing like aero testing or whatever he was doing in Abu Dhabi. I would love to see like how they actually stock up because I know that they'd be competitive, and I think everybody else in the racing industry knows they'd be competitive. But the F1 fans are like, nah, stupid IndyCar drivers just go in circles.
It's going to be interesting to see how Colton Herta does in F2, though. That's really going to give us an idea of where the level of these drivers are because that's where all the new Formula One drivers come from.
Yep, it's going to be really interesting. I know Colton. He's going to be driving for Wayne Taylor Racing, which is one of my clients in IMSA WeatherTech. So I'll get a chance to kind of talk to him, and I've known him for a couple of years now, and he's a great guy, a great driver. He loves driving. I mean, he's driven the GTLM cars, he's driven IndyCar, he's driven LMP2 cars, he's driven the prototypes before. He should be competitive. Like if the Colton that I know shows up on track in F2, he'll be competitive, but F2 is extremely, extremely competitive and on tracks that he doesn't have a ton of experience with. So I hope it goes well.
Total coincidence that Colton Herta and Jordan Taylor were on the last episode of The Gas in 2025.
Wow, that's quite the lineup right there.
Rolex 24, of course, coming up as the first race, really, of the 2026 season, first big race. You guys are going to be there. Any predictions for the IMSA season for either of you?
That's the beauty of IMSA is we could get a pole sitter. Like we could say that Wayne Taylor Racing will be on pole, but then at the end of Sunday afternoon after the race, it could literally be anybody. And I love that because you have so much at play. You have so many different drivers that have different strengths. What if we get a wet race like we had in 2017 and 2015 before that? Like, there's so many different variables. A couple years ago it was below 32 degrees at night. It was like 26 or something. And so you have some cars that absolutely just came to life because of the cold temperatures, and then other cars that just completely died off. So sports car racing is one of those things that I wish fans would give it a chance. Yes, it's hard to watch a 24-hour, but there's so much going on with it and how many different strategies there are and how many different types of cars there are with different strengths and weaknesses and looks and engine sounds. Like at the end of last season, we had the Valkyrie running a straight pipe V12 competitive with the Cadillac GTP car and a Lamborghini. That's what I love about IMSA and what I love about World Endurance Championship is that you just don't know until we get to the checkered flag, and that's what makes it fun. You could think your car is fast, you could think your team's fast, and it might not be.
From the driver perspective, you've got the Triple Crown, Indy 500, Monaco, and then either Le Mans or Daytona. But from the fans' perspective, these are really the amazing races to go to.
I mean, you can't beat like I'm a big advocate for, you know, going on social media and trying to educate people. And one of the things, like even this morning, I saw somebody like, what am I going to do in the off season for Formula One because it's 2 months long and oh, what are we going to do with no racing on tracks? Like they're already racing in Dakar right now. And then we have the Rolex, coming up in 2.5 weeks, 3 weeks for a race, but you can also go to the Roar for free, I think. If it's not free, it's like $5. And then for the actual race week, you get a 4-day ticket for like $160. with garage access, and you get to go on the grid. Like, I love the 24 hours of Le Mans. Don't get me wrong. I love Le Mans. I love Le Sarve. I love the ACO and the World Endurance Championship and the feeling of being on the grid or watching the cars come to the start for the 24 hours of Le Mans or being on the Mulsanne. Like, I love it. But the average person will not be allowed to go on the grid, will not be allowed to go in the garage area for the 24 hours of Le Mans. Like, they have an open fan grid walk like twice during the week, but that's it. And the garage area is open during Daytona all day, all night for 4 days, and you can go whenever you want with no exceptions. And the cars are literally lined up, waiting to go out to qualify or waiting for when they get released for their recon lap before the race starts. Like, you can just go out there as a fan with your 3-year-old. Like, I have a 4-year-old right now, and I could take her on the grid for the 24 hours of Daytona. And I think that's really, really special. It is definitely like a really cool race.
You going to be bringing the film camera with you again this
I
year?
will have it. I don't know. I don't really know what my plan is with them. I've shot enough that I could do a second book from 2025. And to be honest with you, some of the pictures from this past year I actually like more than some of the pictures from 2024. I could do a second book, but whether or not I want to is another story. Like, it was pretty labor intensive. And to be honest, I don't honestly know how well it's selling right now. So I haven't heard from the publisher like what our numbers are. The European copies haven't even shipped yet because they'll start shipping in January, in mid-January. So I really don't even have numbers. Like, if we get all of these books sold, then yeah, maybe we'll do a second one because clearly there's the market for it. But I don't, and we only did 1,500 copies. It's not like I'm doing 20,000 copies. It's only 1,500 copies. So we'll see. I will have the camera more for just to do it, to have it for fun and maybe do a social media post, but whether it turns into another book down the road, I'm not sure yet.
All right. Jamey Price, Racing Unfiltered, a year in motorsports. Captured on film. Get it your favorite bookseller. Don't expect to see Jamey in the bookstore looking for it, though. He likes to shop online. Thanks for joining us so much today. Really enjoyed hearing about this.
Thanks, Gary. Thanks, Alex. It's been an honor.
Alex, hope you're feeling good and ready for a big 2026 year on the gas.
I am super ready, and I'm super ready to see Jamie in Daytona because one of my clients happens to be IMSA, so I will be there,
Let's
and
go, baby.
it's going to be fun, man. It will be a very good time. And I hope everybody listening uh, makes a point to go to any race this year. To Jamie's point, there is a lot more going on in racing than Formula One, and a lot of it's affordable and a ton of fun. If you have a track that's local that is running literally anything, go have a good time. That's the gateway drug. Just go to any race and you will find yourself wanting to go to a lot of races. I think Jamie can back me up on that. And then if you're smart, you'll go to a race where he's taking photos and you'll see the really cool stuff that comes out of his camera.
And on your way to one of those tracks, don't forget to tune in to the gas on your favorite podcast platform. We'll see you next week. The Gas is a production of A Car Media and American Cars and Racing.com.